Porsche's 3.8-litre 911 Turbo can humble virtually any stratospherically priced supercar you care to name in terms of real-world usable performance. It was always fast, but in this 7th generation version, that speed is more accessible. So it's not only one of the most technologically advanced cars ever built, it's also one of the most exhilarating. In short, another engineering masterclass from Porsche. Give Porsche £100,000 or thereabouts, and it will hand over the keys to one of the fastest and most capable cars on Earth. It's called the 911 Turbo. Now, that's an awful lot of money for the vast majority of motorists, but when we're talking about cars that can hurl themselves from a standing start to 60 miles an hour in under 4 seconds and home in on the magic 200 mile an hour barrier, it's actually quite reasonable. Frighteningly for rivals, the much improved 3.8-litre model that we're testing here manages to be lighter, sharper, it rides better, and it's even faster. Porsche, of course, was one of the very first manufacturers to adopt turbo technology with the famous whale-tail 4-litre 911 Turbo model of 1974. Today, that car's 256 brake horsepower has been doubled with the 3.8-litre 911 Turbo we're testing here, boasting anything up to 523 brake horsepower or 493 brake horsepower in the standard guise that I'm testing here. A handful of stratospherically priced supercars seem a little faster on paper, but none can outsprint or outhandle this car in the real world. We're about to find out why. Now, prior to this model, Porsche had already bought us a turbo version of the 997 Series 911, but it was significantly different. I drove it at launch and thought the thing absolutely brilliant. My only issue with it being the usual one with this car, that the uber-powerful engine could so dominate the driving experience that just occasionally some of the crucial interactivity that 911s are so famous for sometimes felt as if it was being lost. Porsche recognised the problem and set to work to try and rectify it. 2 years of development later, and at the end of 2009, we saw this car. It was one so dramatically changed that Porsche see it as a separate 7th 911 Turbo generation in its own right. Whereas the previous 997 Series 911 Turbo had a 3.6-litre engine, this one has a very different 3.8-litre unit. It's still a flat 6, but now it features high-pressure direct injection, plus larger intercoolers for the twin turbos and a host of other little tweaks to boost power right up to 493 braked horses. That's 20 horsepower more than before. Go for the Turbo S version that most customers choose, and that figure rises up to 523 brake horsepower. But to be honest, a less expensive way of matching its pace would be simply to specify the Sport Chrono option on the standard 911 Turbo model, delivering as it does an overboost function for the turbo that increases torque from 479 pounds-foot to a shattering 516 pounds-foot for 10 seconds at a time. And you also get the addictive launch control system as part of that package. All very nice. But as I've already suggested, lack of power was never really a problem for this car in the first place. The key issue was a lack of tactile involvement. Now, purists will always tell you that less is more in this respect. Well, perhaps a few purists need to drive this car if that's what they really think, because it really does represent a genuine step forward here. Porsche have, for example, dialed back the turbo boost pressure just a little bit for extra drivability and keener throttle response. Then there are the revised engine mounts you get as part of the Sport Chrono pack for extra chassis tautness. Most important, though, are the changes to the ride, the alterations to the spring and damper settings that mean this car's whole attitude towards bumps and ridges, ripples and grooves is more forgiving. It works with you, which is always nice when you've got 500 brake horsepower straining to be let off the leash. Just as well then that you've still got Ford-driven wheels to transmit all of that to the tarmac. something that 911 GT2 owners pay £23,000 more to do without. It's a system that's been further honed, but it's also one that this car is less reliant on these days. One of the key reasons why is the box you should tick for the optional torque vectoring system. It automatically brakes the inside rear wheel during hard cornering, giving this car a newfound willingness to turn in. And it really works. You can really feel it tucking the rear in neatly and helping to bring the nose around. Further assistance comes from the industry-leading PSM Porsche Stability Management stability system that just will help you if you edge a bit or step over the line. Now, if you select either of the Sport or Sport Plus, that's the firm or firmer suspension options via these buttons here, and both of those are actually a little bit stiff for normal road use, then the PSM system will give you a little bit more leeway before cutting in. You don't need to be a car enthusiast to recognise the distinctive shape of a 911, but you may need to be a bit of a Porsche-phile to recognise the visual changes that this 911 Turbo model boasts over its immediate predecessor. Owners of older versions might recognise the wider air intake, the trendy LED daytime running lights, the titanium louvers on the front side air vents, and the smarter low-drag door mirrors. At the rear there are restyled LED tail lights and larger tailpipes poking out through the rear valance. Turbo S customers don't get much more than the badge and a rather exclusive set of 19-inch alloy wheels to identify their meritocracy. Body style choice lies between this coupe and the even more exclusive cabriolet version. There's no glass-top Targa option, sadly. And either way, this car has been on a bit of a diet, losing up to 50 kilograms as part of the improvement process, bringing total weight down to 1,570 kilograms in manual coupe guise. The cabriolet is actually only about 85 kilograms heavier, one reason why it carries virtually no performance penalty over the fixed head model. Soft top buyers don't even suffer in terms of luggage space, given that the boot is at the front. Not that there is much space. With just 105 litres on offer, you'd do well to invest in the Porsche bespoke luggage kit, so you can make the best of it. Inside, though it doesn't have the vodka bar chic of a Maserati or the Old Spice machismo of an Aston, the interior is as classy as the exterior lines would suggest, if a little subdued for a car bearing a six-figure price tag. The fascia is dominated by the Porsche Communication Management System, the PCM system, with its 6.5-inch colour screen that bundles together satellite navigation, the audio system and even an optional TV tuner. The front seats are largely comfortable items that seat you low to the ground, but there's a whole variety of more sporty seat options depending on how racy you want to feel. Now, if, like most buyers, you go for the PDK semi-automatic gearbox that I've got here, it's well worth paying a little bit extra for these proper wheel-mounted paddle shifters that are an option rather than the standard wheel-mounted rocker switches. They're rather fiddly that Porsche offers as standard with this car. You never thought Porsche 911 turbo motoring would be cheap, did you? And of course it isn't. Pricing starts at around £107,000 for the coupe model, with a premium of around £7,000 on top of that if you want the soft top cabriolet. There's a further premium of around £17,000 over the basic coupe price if you want the Turbo S model, but even that is decent value when you're comparing this car to pricier but marginally slower rivals like Ferrari's 458 Italia or Lamborghini's Gallardo. Probably this car's closest rival, though, is Audi's R8 V10, which is sharply styled, probably more exotic to look at, but arguably slightly less sharp to drive and certainly less usable every day. Whether you choose the 493 brake horsepower turbo model or the 523 brake horsepower Turbo S in either coupe or cabriolet guises, the flat six twin turbo direct injection 3.8 litre unit is essentially the same. And as for the specification, well, it's probably easier to talk about the things that this car doesn't have. the PDK semi-automatic gearbox, the ceramic brakes, the fancy 19-inch alloy wheels, the adaptive seats, the cornering headlights, the nice-to-have PTV torque vectoring system, and the pretty much essential sport chrono package. Well, they're all on the options list, but that's only on the standard turbo model. They're included within the price of the Turbo S for less collectively than it would cost you to specify them all individually on a standard turbo. Even the fastest cars in the world need to be seen to be more efficient these days, and this 911 Turbo turns in a great performance at the pumps for a car of this class, thanks in part to its direct injection engine. You can expect around 25 miles to the gallon on a regular basis, as long as you don't drive it too hard, which is an impressive performance for a supercar in this sector. CO2 figures are unaffected whether you go for the manual or the PDK semi-automatic gearbox. That means that a normal manual model will deliver 272 grams per kilometre of CO2, but that figure will fall to figures starting from 268 grams per kilometre of CO2 if you go for the PDK only Turbo S model and its very clever gearbox. Insurance, of course, is a top of the shop Group 20. There are basically three kinds of supercar. The first group, Astons, AMG, Mercedes and the like, are very fast and stylish, but aren't really much at home on twisties or racetracks. The second group, Ferraris, Lamborghinis and so on, very definitely are, but need a genius like Schumacher or Alonso to get the best from them. Nor would you really want to nip down to the shops in one. Which leaves the third group, a very exclusive one indeed, for cars that can combine everything in one exhilarating, everyday usable package. Now, Audi's R8 gets very close to qualifying here, but at the end of the day, I'd narrow down membership to just one car. This one. This 3.8 litre 911 Turbo is faster than ever, but more importantly, it is now speed that mere mortals can enjoy to the full. It is at last the definitive supercar.